Hi, Barbara Friedberg here, former portfolio manager and university investments instructor, here to talk about cash. Now, many of you think cash is obsolete. You pay for everything with a credit card, you have your bills automatically paid through your bank, or you do manual auto pay through a bank or financial platform. So, why are we even talking about cash? Well, cash is a lot more than just the bills in your wallet. And cash has not gone the way of the blacksmith or the Bluetooth BlackBerry phone. So, yeah, cash is still important, and you still do need to have some cash on hand. So, today we are going to cover some of the main points of this article. And for the full story, of course, I'm going to give you a link to the article below, as well as a lot of other links to products and services that I'll discuss in this video. Now, be aware that if you do click on some of the links in the video, our company might get a small commission that helps us fund our channel. So, we'll talk about what is cash, how much should I have in my savings, in my checking, what's an emergency fund, do I need it, and how much cash should I have in my wallet, and what about how much cash should I have in my investment portfolio? So, let's get started. Cash or cash equivalents is money that can quickly be converted into dollars or whatever currency that you use. So that includes the money that is in your checking account, your savings account, your bank certificate of deposit, your high yield cash account, as well as a money market mutual fund, which pays a higher yield. And just as an aside, before we get going, I want to stress that any cash that you have that is not invested today, with the exception of a few $1,000s, you should have liquid and accessible to pay your bills in your checking account. The rest of your cash should be in higher yielding investments, such as certificates of deposit that you buy at your bank through your investment or through your investment broker, or in a high yield money market mutual fund. And that way you'll be getting higher interest than you typically get in just a traditional savings account, which pays you nothing. So, how much cash should I have in my savings account? What's it for? Why do you need it? The standard financial professional answer to that is keep roughly 6 to 9 months of living expenses liquid in your cash account, in your savings account. Why? Well, we all remember the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. Lots of people lost their jobs. Our whole lifestyle changed. And many of us needed access to a lot of cash. If you lose your job, you're going to need some money to replace that. That's where your cash account comes in. If you're planning a vacation in the next year or two, you do not want to borrow to go on vacation. No, that's a big no-no. So you want to have some cash to pay for that as well. So that amount of money is the rule of thumb that you should keep in savings. 3 to 6 months of your salary. And that'll keep you comfortable if there is an upset in your job situation. Now, that can also be considered your emergency fund. And emergency fund could cover things like repairing your air conditioning or heating system, like I just had to do. And let me tell you, it is not pretty. It was very expensive. And when the thermometer hit 100 for weeks on ends with no air conditioning, I knew I had to replace our air conditioning system. Now, I could have borrowed for that, but fortunately, having an emergency fund with over $10,000 in it was enough to cover paying for that new HVAC system. But if you have, say, a low interest rate HELO or home equity loan, some people are comfortable having that as part of their emergency cash. And that's an option. And a lot of the question of how much cash should I have in savings or how much emergency cash should I have gets down to your psychology. I'm anxious. I like to be prepared for the what ifs. And we all know the future is unknowable. I sometimes use this little dice to help me what I should do. For example, I roll it and it might say absolutely or most likely or ask me again later. Now, this dice is great for decision making, but as you well know, it has no true predictability. It doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. So for me, it's a game. Nobody knows the future. So we're getting back to emergency cash. Figure out what your net worth is. Now, if you have a high net worth and you have a lot of investments that are not in a retirement account, maybe you can afford to have a smaller cash cushion. But be aware, if you need that cash during a stock market drop and you don't have it liquid, that means in a money market mutual fund or a certificate of deposit, that means you might be forced to sell securities when they are down and take a loss. And that's kind of a painful thing to have to do. But again, it's a risk reward situation. If you keep more of your investments invested in the stock market over the long term, you're going to earn a higher interest rate because over the past 100 years or so, the stock market has delivered on average about 9% a year. Whereas over that same period of time, your cash assets, short-term treasuries, certificates of deposit, high-yield money market accounts have been in the 5% or less range. So, getting back to your psychological temperament. I already told you I'm nervous, I'm anxious. I don't care if I lose a little bit of potential return from my investments. I like having cash. Those of you that can tolerate the risk might want to have a smaller cash cushion as long as you do not have to go into debt for emergencies. And you do not want to go into debt for emergencies for the simple reason that if you borrow from your credit cards, you're going to be paying about 20% interest. So even if you have money in the stock market, you can expect to earn about 9% interest return on those investments. So you're paying 20%, earning 9%, you're still losing 11%. And that brings us to how to create an emergency fund. Because except for the most risk tolerant people, you do want to keep some money in cash. And like we said, rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months. And for most people, that's a good benchmark. Now, you're not going to have that all at once. You're going to have to save it up over time. And number one, it's probably a good idea to have the money for your emergency account automatically deducted from your paycheck so you don't see it. And so that's step one. And the easiest way to implement your saving for your emergency is automate. And not only do you want to automate for your emergency fund, but you also want to do that for saving and investing. But we'll save that for another conversation. To create an emergency fund, first you have to look at your budget. And this is just another back of the envelope rule of thumb for budgeting. Allocate 50% to your fixed costs. That means your mortgage, your rent, your food, your insurance, all of that. Then 30% to discretionary costs, entertainment, clothing, hobbies, eating out. And you can always trim this if the numbers are not working out. But you do not want to avoid the fixed costs and the saving and investing. And if you can, you want 20% going into your investing, your emergency fund, and your saving for intermediate goals. And so your investing is going to comprise having a certain amount taken out of your paycheck that will go into your retirement account, and hopefully your employer will match that. That's your investing money. It is not your emergency fund or your cash savings. So in order to reach the 3 to 6 month goal of money for your short-term cash needs, your emergency fund, take the total, divide it by about 6 months, and then have that percentage deducted from your paycheck and go directly into a high yield cash account. We have one right here. You could click on this button. We'll have a link below. You can also use a high yield money market account at your investment broker, or you can use a high yield cash account from your bank. And ultimately, when you reach your 3 to 6 month emergency cash account, you can keep saving in cash and divert some of it into investing. Frankly, I like the idea of building up a bigger cash cushion psychologically, but some people would rather put that money right into the investment markets. So on to, what about my checking account? Well, that's easy. Approximately how much do you have in bills every month? And figure out when your insurance payments come due, when your taxes come due, and just make sure you have enough cash in there to cover it. It's not rocket science. And then probably put a couple of $1,000 extra in your checking account. But if you have overdraft protection, which I advise checking out with your bank to see if you can get that, because I don't know about you, but some of us sometimes have inadvertently overdrawn our account, and that can get expensive. So, easy answer. Keep enough money in your checking account to cover your upcoming bills and a couple extra just for good measure. You can find out from this article that the wealthy have on hand a lot more cash than is recommended. And Maybe they just have that because they can. The wealthy typically understand that if the stock market is overvalued, keeping extra cash on hand can mean when investment bargains come around, they have the cash to invest at lower prices. So that's one reason. The wealthy also have higher expenses than we do. So the wealthy have more cash to fund a more expensive lifestyle. This is another one. My parents, who were born in the Depression, they kept a lot of cash at home. And of course, they lived through the bank failures of the last century. And they had a lot of fear about not being able to access their money. So they kept thousands of dollars of cash at home. Now, those of us that live in an earthquake zone, a flood zone, a hurricane zone might like the idea of keeping cash. Let's say the electrical grid goes out for a couple of weeks, then you have cash to pay for the things that you need. So again, this is kind of a personal decision. If you're a planner, if you're not much of a risk taker, you might want to have several $1,000s of cash at home. Keep it in a safe place, keep it hidden. But if you're not, then, a few $100s might be okay. Again, it's up to you. I can't tell you what to do. I don't know how anxious you are, how much you like to prepare and plan for the future. How much cash should I have in my wallet? Well, literally today, you can go weeks without even needing cash. I sometimes like to have a couple of dollars so that when I go to a restaurant, there's a tip jar. I can throw some money in that. But, it's not necessary. They're getting you to tip everywhere you go, and you can just put it on your credit card if you want. Now, the farmer's market I go to, they require cash. Some restaurants will give you a discount for cash. So, $20 to $40 is probably fine to have in your wallet. Here's another tough one. How much cash should I have in my investment portfolio? If you're young, first of all, cash is not an investment. If you're lucky, your cash return will keep up with inflation. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's certainly not going to grow over the long term in the same way that your stock and bond investments will grow. But cash is important, like we mentioned in the wealthy section of how much cash do wealthy people have on hand because of liquidity. Maybe you want to have some money put aside for reinvesting after a stock market decline, because stock market declines happen. They are unpredictable when. It is predictable that it will happen. And it's frequently a good idea to invest more when stock prices are lower or on sale. So that's one reason to have some cash. If you are nearing retirement or in retirement, the amount of cash you want to have is probably going to be greater because your income will be smaller. And so you may need to access cash to supplement your pension and your Social Security payments. So under those circumstances, you will want more cash. If you are an aggressive investor, you are a risk taker. You can handle big declines in the stock market without blinking an eye and without selling after asset prices drop. You may need very much less cash in your investment portfolio. So in general, I would say between 3 or 4% up to 10% is probably a good amount of cash to have in your investment portfolio. If you're a retiree, of course, you want more. So yes, cash is not an investment, but it does give you peace of mind, it gives you security, and it gives you the ability to avoid debt. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and that will give me motivation and encouragement to create more money, finance, and investing videos for you. We will have links to this article and to high yield cash accounts, the best net worth calculator, and other videos that I think you'd like. See you next time. Bye.